Hello, learner. Welcome to Mr. Quickest Teaches. In this lesson, I'll be analyzing Handel Richardson's short story, "And Women Must Weep, for Men Must Work." It was written in 1931. I read portions of the short story and explain the different figures of speech, the writer's tone, language, the themes, imagery, and other stylistic devices that Richardson uses to strikingly present the experience of Dolly after she visits or attends her first adult ball. Let's dive in. Let me begin by speaking about the author, Ethel Florence Lindsay Richardson. So that's her full name. But then she was born on the 3rd of January 1870 and died on the 20th of March 1946. She was an Australian writer, better known by a pseudonym Handel Richardson. So that's a pseudonym. And then in that period, women usually used male-sounding names because of the bias that they had towards male writers, right? So there was this in favor of male writers, and there was this sort of negative bias towards women. So she used the name Handel Richardson to sound male, like a male. Now in this short story, "And Women Must Weep, for Men Must Work," Richardson tells of the overly confident young lady called Dolly, who is excited about attending her first adult ball. She is certain that her beauty and dress will make her irresistible, especially to male suitors. But her evening unravels contrary to what she had envisaged. In 1931, the year the story was written, a ball would have been like the main place where spinsters meet eligible male suitors. So the story is about Dolly, who is attending her first ball, and then she's extremely confident of her dress and of her beauty and everything. And we see that her experience is rather important because in that period, think of a ball like a modern day, crudely, like a nightclub of sorts. Not really in the sense, because the balls usually were different from nightclub. And nightclub, people go to have fun and all those things. But that's where spinsters or women would meet eligible male suitors. So Dolly was sort of prepped up for this. We're going to look at the person that helps her and everything, an teacher. Now let me read the first portions, or the first three sentences in the short story. She was ready at last, the last bow tie, the last threatening pin in place, and they said to her, Aunt Teacher and Miss Bidons, to sit down and rest while Aunt Teacher climbed into her own talks, or you'll be tired before the evening begins. But she could not bring herself to sit for fear of crushing her dress. It was so light, so hairy. How glad she felt now that she had chosen muslin and not silk, as Aunt Teacher had tried to persuade her. We are going to see that Dolly regrets choosing muslin. But around this point, she's very, happy, excited by her decision, the choice that she's made. So the story opens arrestingly with the narrator telling that she was ready at last, the last bow tie, the last threatening pin in place. This opening suggests that it took a very long time for Dolly to get ready. Additionally, the quote, while Auntie Cha climbed into her own talks, provides vivid visual imagery of the difficulty with which Auntie Cha wore her clothes. These details about how the women wore their dresses highlights the outlandish nature of the fashion of that time. So this short story transports us not only in terms of the story, but also in terms of the dress sense, or the social event and everything. It transports us to an earlier time in history, so around 1931, or maybe around that period, the early 20th century. Now, Auntie Cha and Miss Bidons are really important in the short story because Auntie Cha appears to be Dolly's guardian, female guardian, and she is the one that pays and also guides or tries to, guide Dolly's decision. So our Miss Bidons is like a house help. Now we see here that Dolly is extremely excited, and so she refuses to sit. And she does not sit because she says she does not want to crush her dress. And we see that we are told that the dress is so light and so hairy. So it's like, it's like literally as if she's floating in a cloud or something like that. Now, in the introductory paragraph, the narrator reveals that Dolly is constantly being advised by her guardian, Auntie Cha. So observe the repetition of the name Auntie Cha multiple times in the introductory paragraph. Now, the first advice that she gives at Dolly is that she advised Dolly to sit down and rest while waiting. But we are told that Dolly could not because of her dress choice. And we are told that because she could not bring herself to sit for fear of crushing her dress, it was so light, so hairy. Now, the second advice she gives to Dolly is that she advised Dolly to pick silk. But then Dolly decided on muslin. And she's like, this tells us that Auntie Cha is not sort of like an authoritarian in a manner. She gives advice, and then Dolly can choose to take the advice or reject the advice. Those are at least the first two advice that we see that Auntie Cha relays to Dolly. Now look at the use of simile in the introductory paragraph as well. The gossamer-like stuff seemed to float around her as she moved. He evokes the image of a celestial being walking on a cloud. So it's like Dolly's on a cloud. And we're told that, and the cut of the dress made her look so tall and so different from every day that she hardly recognized herself in the glass. So Dolly's looking at herself and she's just admiring herself. The glass there is a reference to a mirror. That's the expression I was used earlier. The girl reflected there in palest blue with a wreath of cornflowers on her hair might have been a stranger. Never had she thought she was so pretty. Nor had Auntie Cha and Miss Bidons either. Though they all said, well, Dolly, you do. And yes, I think she will be credit to you. Something hot and stingy came to her throat at this, a kind of gratitude for her pinky white skin, her big blue eyes, and fair curly hair. And pity for those girls who hadn't got them. So we see here that Dolly is looking at herself and then she's just admiring herself. And she thinks like she's going to be like the belle of the ball, the most beautiful person at the party. So she has like sympathy for the other girls. It's like there's not going to be any competition. She's going to be the main person. Or an Auntie Cha either to dress them and see that everything was, quote, just so. So she's very happy with her looks, and she's also happy that she has somebody of Auntie Cha's experience to guide her as well. So we see that Dolly considered herself so tall and so pretty in her dress, and even pitied girls who lacked her pinky white skin, her big blue eyes, and fairly curly hair. Her attitude reiterates that a woman's attractiveness determines a chance of landing a suitor. So in Dolly's mind, her beauty has already set her apart, and she couldn't wait to arrive at the ball. Now we are told that instead of sitting, she stood very stiff and straight at the window, pretending to watch for the car, her long white gloves hanging loose over her one arm. So it's not so as not to spoil it, but her heart was beating Peter Pat. For this was her first real grown-up ball. So that's a very important detail. It was to be held in a public hall, and Auntie Cha, where she was staying, had bought tickets and was taking her. So this is like the event of the day, right? And Dolly was extremely excited. And Auntie Cha had made sure that Dolly could go there by paying. Now let's observe the use of repetition in the introductory paragraph, and then we continue. So the narrator repeats so 6 times before light. So we see it here, right? So she uses the word so hairy, so light, so tall, so pretty. So you see that there are multiple repetitions of so. She repeats and cramped and narrow. Later on, we're going to see them when they are the description of the cab that comes for them, to emphasize various aspects of the setting and the narration. We also see the use of visual imagery as well of Dolly's posture. As it's revealed in the quote, she stood very stiff and straight at the window, while long white gloves hanging loose over one arm tells that she remained standing because she was extremely excited. Then we also see the use of onomatopoeia as well. Beating Peter Pat provides auditory imagery of Dolly's heart beating excitedly It's almost like something that if you were standing close to her, you could hear. She was so excited. And she was excited as chance to attend her first adult grown-up ball. And I think in her mind, she imagined that she was going to get the men falling over her. And then she was going to get a handsome suitor. True, Miss Bidons rather spoiled things at the end by saying, now, mind you, don't forget your steps in the waltz. So that's the third advice. I'll talk about it. And then Miss Bidons tells her what to do. 1, 2 together, 4, 5, 6. And in the wagonette, with the dress filling one seat, Auntie Charles said, now, Dolly, remember not to look too serious or you frighten the gentleman off. So we see advice 3 and 4. Miss Bidons also reminded Dolly about the waltz. We are going to see the importance of this later on. Saying, now, mind you, don't forget your step in the waltz. While Auntie Charles spoke to her about her facial expression, telling her, now, Dolly, remember not to look too serious or you frighten the gentleman off. Now, in my mind, I think these were genuine advice, or these were advice that were very genuine. So, Auntie Cha and Miss Bidons, they've hung out with Dolly, and so they know what she's like. She had not seen, even though she had looked at the glass or the mirror, she had not seen these things. So, look out for the waltz, or be careful during the waltz, and then please smile. So this is a other repetition I was talking about. She was only doing it now because of her dress. So according to in Dolly's mind, the reason why she's frowning now is because of her dress, because the cab was so cramped and the seats so narrow. Now let's look at how the night continues to unravel. So the advice is be careful with the waltz, smile. Now, Dolly describes Miss Bidon's advice as the one that rather spoiled things at the end. So it was like she was very excited, and then when Miss Bidon said this, her excitement sort of dropped. And she was also unhappy with Auntie Charles' advice, because she says, well, it's because of the cab, that's why I'm not smiling. Her words, so Dolly's words revealed that she felt that the advice was unnecessary. She attributed her frown to her dress and the narrow seats. Suddenly, the narrator tells us something happened. Alas, in getting out, a little accident happened. So they got into the cab. While they were getting up, there was an accident. She is a pronoun for Dolly. So Dolly caught at the bottom of one of her flounces. The skirt was made of nothing else on the iron step and ripped up the selvage. Auntie Charles said, my dear, how clumsy. She could have cried for vexation. Now, the narrator screams alas when Dolly's dress tore, which reveals her shock. Although she described the tear as a little accident, he shaped Dolly's night. She also uses vivid visual imagery to present how the tear occurred before revealing that Auntie Cha exclaimed, my dear, how clumsy. The word clumsy suggests that Dolly was to blame, while the sentence she could have cried for vexation shows that Auntie Cha restrained herself from throwing a temper tantrum. Now, the next thing that we see is that the women at the ball tried to help. And we're told that the women took their cloaks. The women who took their cloaks hunted everywhere. They looked everywhere, but could only find black cotton. So the torn selvage, there was nearly half a yard of it, had just to be cut off. This left a raw edge. And when they went into the hall and walked across the enormous floor, with people sitting around, staring, it seemed to Dolly as if everyone had their eyes fixed on it. Auntie Cha sat down in the front row of chairs beside the lady friend, but she slid into a chair behind. So the accident changed the whole Dolly's night. We are told that although there were serious attempts were made to mend the tear, the narrator uses hunted everywhere to show that the relentless efforts, of the women were taking the cloaks or their jackets. The tear made Dolly self-conscious and late. So there were two things that it caused. Dolly became very self-conscious, and he also made her late because you're going to see that by the time they get into the hall, the first dance was over. She felt that, quote, everyone had their eyes fixed on it. So in Dolly's mind, Everyone was looking at the torn selvage. And because of this self-consciousness, we are told that she slid into a chair behind Auntie Cha to hide. Remember, instead of sitting in front. Now let's talk about a bit about the significance of a ball. A ball was a party or social gathering where bachelors met spinsters. So eligible bachelors met spinsters. It was especially important for ladies because they could find husbands there. Husbands were very central to the course of a woman's life then. In that period, you have to get married because your husband or whoever you get married to will help you, sort of lighten your burden by providing and taking care of you and whatnot. You automatically become his responsibility. We are told that the first dance was already over and they were hardly seated before partners began to be taken for the second. So it tells you how late they were because of the tear. Shyly, she mustered the assembly in the cloakroom. Now we see like some sort of like a referral of what happened in the cloakroom where they went to remove their cloak. Remove their cloak. In the cloakroom, she had expected the women to exclaim, "What a pretty frock!" when they handled it. When all they did say was, "This sort of stuff got to fray." Now that's important. I'm going to talk about it. Remember, Dolly chose muslin instead of silk. Auntie Chad advised for silk. And now Dolly saw that in the hall. I saw that the hall was full of lovely dresses. Some much more prettier than hers. And suddenly began to seem rather too plain. Remember what she had looked at previously and thought was like everybody was going to be jealous over her skin and her dress and everything. She says now it looks too plain, even a little dowdy. Perhaps, after all, it should have been better to have chosen silk. Now, this throws up the theme of expectation versus reality. So, this portion highlights the theme of expectation versus reality and the power of faith, F-A-T-E. Dolly expected those in the cloakroom to say, "What a sweet, pretty frock." Instead, they said, this sort of stuff is bound to fray. Also, on entering the hall, she saw that it was full of lovely dresses. She imagined that people would be wowed by her dress. Instead, they sneered at it. So that sort of made Dolly extremely self-conscious and have like a measure of low self-esteem. Hello, learner. I hope you've enjoyed the lesson so far. This is a sample analysis of this short story. To purchase the full analysis of this short story or the entire 10 short stories in your collection, visit mrquickesteaching.com. There you have access to the passage-based questions and also general questions and elements of literature in each of the short stories. See the purchase links in the description below. See you in class.